The Realme 2, the follow-up to the super successful Realme 1 that turned out to be not so much as a follow-up but an addition to the stable. Now, I've spent a week with this as my primary phone, and in today's video, let's see how it fared. But before we do, if this is your first time here, or in case you don't remember the Realme, puns and all, my name's Ash, this is C4eTech. Card to our current giveaways, links in the description below, and while you're down there, hit that bell icon, turn on notifications. Let's now get the show on the road. So let's start with the build. Yes, it's plastic, but it's got a glassy finish. Realme say they have a 12-layer nanoscale plate laminate here, whatever that means. To me, it feels nice in hand. The diamond back pattern looks impressive, especially on a phone in this segment. The fingerprint scanner that was lacking in the first iteration has found its way over here, and it worked well in our time with it. To the front, there are changes too. The screen-to-body ratio has increased. That's thanks in large to that notch up top. Now this display itself, it's a 6.2-inch IPS LCD panel with a 19:9 aspect ratio. The resolution, well, let's get to that in a bit. Now, barring the resolution, the quality of the panel is great, the brightness, the viewing angles, there's Gorilla Glass for protection too. So watching videos is definitely a pleasant experience. Talking about media consumption, there's a headphone jack and it outputs reasonably good audio. The single downwards firing speaker is quite loud too. Now with that, let's move on to the cameras. We've got a primary 13-megapixel f2.2 along with a 2-megapixel depth sensor to the back. Under good light, the camera performed well. Ample detail, good color reproduction, and sufficient dynamic range for the segment. Under low light, the performance degrades. Shaky images like this are very common, but then again, for the price, you can't really complain. There's a bokeh mode for both the front and rear cameras, and the performance was decent. Edge detection wasn't great, but once again, pricing. For the segment, it was definitely acceptable. The 8-megapixel f2.2 selfie camera shoots good selfies. That is a definite pro for this phone. As for videos, there's 1080p at 30 FPS and the video quality is good. There's no stabilization of any kind, but the focus is fast and the detail levels are quite above average. And then we move on to battery life. Now the Realme 2 has an amazing battery, 4230 mAh. When coupled with a power efficient chip inside, it means this one goes on and on and on and on and on. I've had days of light usage where I've ended the day with over 50% juice left. 2 days of moderate usage is definitely a possibility. I came to this phone from the Galaxy S8. And man, did I appreciate it. In my honest opinion, the biggest pro for the Realme 2 is the battery capacity. And now that we touched upon the internals, let's talk performance. This is where I had mixed feelings. We have the Snapdragon 450 running the show, coupled with 3 or 4 gigs of RAM to go along with 32 or 64 gigs of onboard storage respectively. That's along with an option to expand further via a dedicated microSD card slot. The Snapdragon 450 might be an old chip, but when it's paired with a 720p display, which happens to be the resolution here, it keeps things chugging along quite nicely. We have ColorOS 5.2 built on top of Android 8.1 Oreo, and the performance, for the most part, was good. Occasionally, there was a little lag or choppiness. Now, I can't really complain about that, again, because of the segment, but compared to the expectations I had, the powerful Helio P60 on its predecessor, so-called predecessor, the Realme 1, the Snapdragon 450, it did definitely feel like a disappointment, and therein lies the biggest con of the Realme 2. Now guys, before we talk about the con, here's the problem, right? You've got the Snapdragon 450, 625, 626, 630, 636, and then the Helio P60, which is almost 660 level. So we've suddenly dropped so many levels to the 450, and it is still called the Realme 2, and that is my problem, or rather, that's where I had different expectations going in. If this phone was launched as say a Realme 1A or a Realme 1 Lite or something like that, it is priced that way after all, cheaper than the Realme 1. So it isn't a direct successor, but if it was labeled that way, then the performance would definitely be acceptable. The fact that Realme called it the Realme 2 and decided to tease just the build and design for weeks before the launch meant every one of us went in expecting a phone that's better than the Realme 1. Now, the Realme 2 is not a better phone compared to the Realme 1. Yes, it's got an extra camera to the back. Yes, it's got a higher screen to body ratio. And yes, it's got a fingerprint scanner that the Realme 1 lacked. But it also has a weaker chip and a display with a substantially lower resolution. If you remove the naming from the equation and look at the Realme 2 as just a phone, this is a 9,000 rupee phone priced 1k above the Redmi 5 and 6 and 1k below the Redmi Note 5. I'd still stand by my conclusion from the unboxing. At 8,000 rupees, this phone would have been a Redmi 5 killer, the best phone in the 8K segment. But at 9K, it is better than the Redmi 5, yes, feels that way. It's got a higher capacity battery, it's got dual cameras and a more attractive build. So if these are things you want, then yeah, it's a good buy for you. But the Redmi Note 5 is just 1k away. And the Note 5 comes without a notch, for those who hate notches, a better camera, much better camera, battery life that's close, and a more powerful chip inside. So the Realme 2 is a niche buy if you value the build and want a notch. The 9K, for 9K, then yeah, get the Realme 2. It's a good phone. But others have both the Redmis above and below to consider. Okay with the build and want to save some money, ready to compromise on the notch, the second camera and some battery capacity, the Redmi 5 is an option. Want better cameras and performance, hit the notch and are okay paying 1,000 rupees more, the Redmi Note 5 comes into play. Now that the review part is done, a little bit of personal stuff. Personally, I don't like the misleading Realme 2 name. I feel that if it's not a successor, it shouldn't be marketed as one. I know the Realme 2 Pro is coming, but then they should have just been at least called the Realme 2 Lite or something, just a Realme 2. The expectations go differently. I also dislike how Realme has stopped selling the 332 and 464 variants of the Realme 1 once this has been launched. Now the only Realme 1 you can buy is the 6128 variant at 14,000 rupees. It almost feels like Realme bought the Realme 1 to the market at very low prices to create a lot of hype to show that they are offering much better value than Xiaomi. And once that hype was done, they have kind of gone back to providing similar value to Xiaomi. Now, providing similar value to Xiaomi, that is nothing to complain about. That's definitely great by itself. But this kind of marketing and the mislead from the naming, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth and makes me wonder what other things this brand will change in the future. It makes me not trust the brand. And now, since this is more of a personal perspective of the brand, I decided to talk about it only after the objective review of the phone is done. So take it for what it's worth to you. And that's it for this review. Thumbs up, thumbs down, based on what you felt about the video. Subscribe, turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on any of our content. Thanks a lot for watching. Till next time, my name's Ash. You've been watching C4E Tech, and I'm signing off for now. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.